All right. Okay. Hide. Um. All right. So this is what we have here. Let me open this on live server. Okay. So basically, what we have here is just a header, right? In fact, everything here is just a header. We have two divs inside the header. We have a nav, and then we have lines, right? Those are the two divs. So we have nav and we have divs inside the header, right? So that's all. So inside the nav we have the home, about, blah 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 blah. Inside the other one we have this line. So I used line just to create the whole hamburger menu stuff. It's really simple, right? Let me go live so you see what we have. Okay, this is taking too much time. But basically what we would see is just we would see a hamburger icon here. That's all you are going to see, a hamburger icon here, right? So yeah, so it's open. So this is what we have on the page, just this hamburger icon. And how I did this was I used the close this. I used the so this div is called lines, right? And then we have two lines. We have this first line and this second line, right? So that's how I made that line. So I just targeted the lines and I said for line, because look at what I gave a class of line. It's inside a div, so I gave one line and the second line. So this is line, the class. So I went to my CSS and I said, this line here, you're going to have a width of 50 pixels. So that's the width of the line. And then the height is going to be like 5 pixels, right? And that gave us this. So if I had said 1 pixels, you see that the line would be like really, really thin because the height is very, very thin. So it's very, very thin. But instead I said 5 pixels. Yeah, and then the width is 50 pixels. If I say 150 pixels, for instance, to be very, very long, to be a bit longer, right? But I just said 50 pixels. Yeah, and that's what's happening here. So another thing I did was, of course, I flexed the header. So if you go to the header, you'll see that the header is flexed. So the nav is to the left, while the lines is to the right, which is this lines. By now, I understand, like, you guys should understand what's happening here. Then the nav, of course, is not displaying. So since the nav is not displaying, what does it mean? Thank you. So that means that I have done display none somewhere here. So this is nav. So if you go to our CSS, let's see. All right. So look at nav here, and the display is none. Right. So that's just basically what I did. Is there anything here that is confusing at this point? Okay, all right. So again, these are just divs, right? So all I did was I just targeted this div and this div. Of course, you're not going to do this in your tags because you'll be using an image, right? So it's not. I just want you to understand how I did it. So you use just a div with nothing inside, another div with nothing inside. So the div, I gave it a width. I gave it a width of 50 pixels, 5 pixels. Normally it will not show, but then I now give it a background color of green. So that's why now it's showing. So normally if I did not give it a background color, there will be a div there, but you don't know. You won't know, right? Yeah, maybe because of the cursor of pointer. That's why you will know that there's something here. But you wouldn't know ordinarily. So the cursor of pointer, I gave it in the div containing both of the lines. These lines. That is this guy here. While each individual line is here. So that's how I that's how I got that. It's kind of straightforward, right? Um, okay, so what we want to achieve is this. We want, when we click on this guy, we want the menu to be displayed. That's basically what we want to achieve. We click on this guy, the menu gets displayed. Um, so how do you do that? That is something you can do with CSS, but it's very advanced CSS, in my opinion, anyway. So most times JavaScript makes it really, really easy to achieve that, right? So what I did here was in my roots um, part, I added a script.js, right? And this script.js, look at the only code inside, just these guys here. That's all in my script.js. That's why I said that the task is really, really simple. And once I start to explain what's really happening here, you'd see that it's actually really, really simple, right? If you just follow things correctly. So this is my script.js. Now, this code here would not work unless I add it here inside the body tag. So this is the body tag and the script is inside the body tag, right? So I created a script tag and the source of the script tag is the name of my file, which we can name anything. I just named mine script.js. You can name this file anything. So whatever you name the file is what you're going to name it here. And that's just that about that. So now with this, I have linked this script with my index, right? Mind you, it's not CSS, it's index that I linked. So don't go to your CSS and start linking JavaScript file. It wouldn't work. Oh. So look at what we did here. Let's go over it again. Nav is hidden, right? Nav is hidden. Has a display of none. But we want whenever we click on what? Whenever I click on this guy, right? Lines. Because this lines is the div containing these two arrows. So on yours, maybe it's an image, right? Because yeah, that's you made use of an image. So once you click on that image, whatever class you give it, we want somehow for the menu to display. And then whenever you click on it again, we want it to go off, right? So currently we have achieved that, right? If I click here, the menu displays. If I click here, it goes off, right? I click here, the menu displays. I click here, it goes off. So what is happening? So I want to go to my inspect element so that we can actually see what exactly is happening here, right? We would go to the header and then look at the nav that was hidden, right? It has a display of none here, right? Yeah, but this guy is always here. It's still here. So now, if I click on this icon, look at this class here, right? Just look at it and then tell me what happened. I want to click now. So I've clicked on it. So what happened? Thank you. So that means where that nav visible, what was added? What? Yeah. Okay. So a new class was added, right? A new class was added. And if I click on it, it takes the new class that was added goes off. It's now just nav, right? And nav is of course has a display of none. But once I click on this, a new class is added which is visible. And in our style.css, we said whenever there is a nav and there is a visible in one div, the display should change from none to flex, right? That's basically what we did here in our style.css. So we said whenever we have a class of nav and a class of visible inside that div, we want the display to change from none that it is here to flex. So how did we do that? So in our script tag, what we did was we created a variable called hamburger, right? So when we say variable, we are just saying something that holds information, basically, or holds something. It contains something, right? So that thing that it contains is called lines. This class called lines. So we went to our document and we said we want to query this document and we want to get the class called lines. So that's what we did here. So here we just queried this whole document and then we have just one class called lines. So we picked this class called lines. So that's basically what's happening here. So this lines now is identified by this name hamburger. So we created a variable with the name of hamburger, and then we using this sign we assigned it this guy called lines, which can be found in our HTML lines. And that's exactly the same thing we did with the nav too. So this nav guy, it has a class called nav. So we did the same thing. We came here and we said, I want to create another variable. The name is nav, and I want to query my document and then pick out the class called .nav. So that's basically what we just did. So up to this point, do you guys understand what's happening? Do you guys understand, at least to an extent, what I'm explaining? Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I understand that perfectly. I understand that. But, like we didn't want to go too in depth into JavaScript because JavaScript is a whole new ball game, right? So just take it that what you are learning is just something that would assist you in doing your task, right? Assist you in doing your task, even in project phase, not just creating static site. At least the menu should, you click on something, the menu should show. I mean, there should be a bit of functionality. So just know that this is how you get, this is one of the ways, but this is the way you'll be using anyway, that you can get items from inside your HTML documents. You can target a class or an ID and then work with that ID or class. So we got two IDs here. One is nav, then the other one is hamburger, but we called it lines here. So we came here and we said, okay, I want to create a variable called hamburger and I want to query the documents, index.html documents, and get the lines, right? Now the second one is saying this nav is a new variable that I created. I want to query the document.query selector, and select nav and assign it to this guy, right? So that is basically what's happening here. Let's not think too much about it. Of course, if your own the one you want to query has a different class, you just come here, you give it, you create your variable, and then you target that class. It doesn't have to be my class, please. Use your own class that you set on your document. Now, these are the two things we need to get from the index from this file, because this is what we want to work with. Just these two guys, because we have to click these guys, and then once we click this guy, we want to display this guy. And then once we click this guy again, we want to hide this guy. So that's basically what we want to achieve. That is why we're taking just the two of them. Now, here we want to apply something to this hamburger. Again, the hamburger is this guy, right? This guy is the hamburger. So we want, once you click on this guy, we want this nav to be displayed. So that's basically what we did here. And it's really, really simple. So how it works is, since we know that this guy now stands for the hamburger menu, which we got from the HTML. That is what this guy is now. So we are saying this hamburger, I want to add an event listener. Now we have so many kinds of event listeners. Like once you click on this guy, or once you hover over this guy, or once you do this, once you do that, something would happen, right? But the one we chose for this hamburger, the event we chose is the event called, who can tell us? It's right here on the document though. So thank you very much. Yeah. So click. So we are saying once I click on this hamburger, which of course, like we said, is this guy, right? So once I click on this guy, I want to run this function. This is called an arrow function. So don't worry yourself about it, but you just have to do it like this. So you're saying this hamburger, I want to add an event listener. I want to listen to for something to happen. And what I want to happen is called click. Now, once I click on this hamburger, I want to run this function. And the function is really simple. The function starts here and ends here. In fact, let me bring this guy down. So the function starts from this guy up to the closing of this guy. So what I'm doing here is listening to a click event made on the hamburger. And once you hear somebody click or somebody clicks on this guy, run this function, run this function. So this function, what is happening here is really simple. So we are saying this nav now, which is here, we are saying in this class, like on its class, because currently now it has a class of just nav. So we are going through the classes now, and we are saying, I want you to add this guy called visible, right? I want you to add this guy called visible. That's all we are doing. So once I click on this hamburger, then run this function. And this function, what this function is saying is that this guy in the list, in the classes that it has, I want you to toggle between this guy and it goes off. It comes in and it goes off. So that is why we are using this toggle. So this toggle, what it does is that it's going to add visible once you click. And once you click again, it's going to take off visible. So that's how toggle works. Somebody's unmuted, so please mute, please. Okay. Can you mute? Who is that? Tech Joseph, please. Can you mute yourself, please? Please. You can always ask your question when we're done. Thank you. All right. So basically, that is what is happening. So how toggle works is it adds a class to this class list, and then if you click on this event listener again, it takes away the class. Adds a class, takes away the class. Which is why once we come here and we click on this guy, the nav now has a class of visible. And then once you click on this guy, it takes away the class of visible. So that is all that is happening in JavaScript, guys, for this your menu. That is all we are doing. Again, what we did was we created a variable and then we queried our HTML and took a class called lines, and then we did the same thing for the nav and took the class called nav. And then with the hamburger, which is the one we click, we added the event listener of click and said, once you click on this guy, run this function. And what the function does is it takes the nav and then it adds visible, which is a class. And then once you click on it again, it takes away that class. That is why we are using the toggle. So that's it. That's it. So ordinarily, that is not enough because once you do that, you are just doing the whole adding a class here, removing a class here. It doesn't do anything ordinarily. But why this works now is because if you go to our CSS, now what we now did was very simple. We said once you have nav and visible in that element, this is CSS, right? So once you have nav, of course, once it's just nav, then it's display none. But once you have nav dot visible, what does this mean? First of all, before we even continue, nav dot visible. Exactly. Beautiful. That's it's as simple as that, right? So you are targeting two different things at once. That is why there is no space. It's just you can target as much as three, four, 10. Of course, it doesn't make much sense. But if you have multiple classes, you can target both of them and say, once this element has two of these classes, I want to run something. I want something to happen, which is what we did here. So we're saying this nav dot visible. Once these two are available, then change the display from none to flex. That's about what we just did. That is all. So that would fix if I take away these guys now, if I take away all these guys because I was doing too much here, it's not really necessary. So once we that I've taken away all these guys, right? Now once we come here and we click on this, it still works. The only difference is that this whole X thing happening here goes off. It's no longer working. That's why I commented it out, right? But the whole concept of being hidden and being displayed, being hidden and being displayed works perfectly well, right? Yeah. So that is basically how you do that. That's basically how you create a very simple navigation menu. Um, so I would like to stop recording and then we'll talk a little bit about the advanced um stuff I did. A little bit advanced. It's not like hard, it's not even difficult, but let me stop recording first.